Hi, welcome to Still Finding My Voice, where we take one thought at a time and sometimes wrap it up with a bow, and sometimes we just throw it out with the bathwater, the dirty bathwater it is, and sometimes we just give ourselves a little grace. Today I have a story for you that I have to give myself a lot of compassion for, and hopefully you can relate to this as well. Today's episode, Don't Open Your Mouth. How I Found My Voice Anyway. Finding your voice, overcoming self-doubt, and speaking with confidence. I want to take you back to 1993. I was president of the Ladies Comedy Club in Hollywood. Now, let me just pause right there. President of the Ladies Comedy Club of Hollywood sounds fun, right? It sounds confident. It sounds like someone who knew exactly who she was, knew exactly what she wanted to say, and had no problem standing in front of a room. But that was not fully true. At that time, I was a dancer. That was the part of me people understood, the part of me people celebrated. I could perform, I could move, I could entertain, I could smile on cue. I could show up under lights in costume with choreography, music, timing, and energy. That part of me had a place. But my voice, that part of me still felt, well, let's say, unsure. And one day, one of the members of the Ladies Comedy Club of Hollywood came up to me and said something I would carry with me for years. She said, "Lynn, you're a great dancer. Just don't open your mouth." Just do not open your mouth. It was probably said quickly. Maybe she thought she was being funny. Maybe she did not realize the weight of what she said. Maybe to her it was just a comment, but to me it landed deep. Because sometimes the words people say to us do not just pass through our ears. They attach themselves to our identity. And that one sentence became more than feedback. It became a wound. It became shame. It became a story I started to believe. You're good when you perform. You're good when you entertain. And you are good when you smile, and you're great when you dance. But when you speak, be careful. Stay quiet. Do not open your mouth. And maybe you've had a sentence like that spoken over you too. Maybe it was not those exact words. Maybe someone said, "You're too much." Maybe someone said, "You're just not enough." Maybe someone laughed when you tried. Maybe someone dismissed your idea. Maybe someone made you feel small in a room where you were trying to grow. And years later, even when your life looks different, that one sentence can still echo. It can show up when you want to speak in a meeting. It could show up when you want to start something new. It can show up when you want to tell your story, or when you want to be visible online. It could show up when you are on Zoom and suddenly you want to turn your camera off. I understand that one personally. I have learned that hiding does not always look like hiding. Sometimes hiding looks like being busy. Sometimes hiding looks like perfectionism. Sometimes hiding looks like waiting until you are more qualified, or it might look like, I'll do it later. Sometimes hiding looks like telling yourself, who am I to say this? And for me, hiding sounded like, just don't open your mouth. But here is what I know now. A painful sentence may shape you. but it does not have to define you. That comment did hurt me, but it did not get the final word. Because years later, I started a podcast called Still Finding My Voice, this very podcast you're listening to right now. And I want you to understand the power of that. The woman who was told not to open her mouth started a podcast. A podcast! That means I literally built something around opening my mouth. I built something around speaking, around sharing, around telling truth, around letting my voice shake if it needed to shake, around showing up even when it felt awkward, around saying, I am still finding my voice, but I am not waiting until it is perfect to use it. And through that journey, I created something I now called the Voice Method. It is a framework for healing, courage, and becoming who I was meant to be. It is the process I had to walk through to reclaim that part of me I had hidden. The acronym sounds like this. The V is for view and validate. And what that means is we have to be willing to look honestly at what happened, not to minimize it, not laugh it off, not pretending it didn't matter, not say, well, it was a long time ago, so I should be over it. No, sometimes healing begins when we finally say, that hurt me. That embarrassed me. That changed how I saw myself. That made me shrink. Validation is not weakness. Validation is honesty. And honesty is where freedom begins. The next letter is the O, and O is for open. Open means we begin to create space for a new possibility because shame wants to keep the door closed. Shame dismisses you, dismisses me. Shame says, this is who you are. Shame says, stay small. Shame can say, do not try again. Shame can also say, do not let them hear you. But opening says, maybe there is more to me than that moment. Maybe my voice is not gone. Maybe I can try again. And just maybe I can begin right here. Opening does not mean you are not scared. It means fear is no longer the one holding the keys. And then there's the I, which is for integrate. This is where we stop separating the parts of ourselves. For a long time, I understood myself as only a dancer. That was my identity. But I had to learn that my movement mattered and my message mattered too. My body had a voice. My story had a voice. My experience had a voice. My wisdom had a voice. My faith had a voice, and my humor had a voice. My pain had a voice too. Integration means I do not have to leave one part of myself behind in order to become another version of myself. I can bring it all with me. The dancer, the woman, the podcaster, the coach, the awkward Zoom hider, the brave beginner, the person still healing, the person still becoming. All of it belongs. And it takes courage to embrace that. So the C is courage. And let me be clear. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes courage is not a stage in a spotlight. Sometimes courage is pressing record. Sometimes courage is sending the email. Sometimes courage is joining the Zoom, or maybe even raising your hand. Sometimes courage is telling the truth. Sometimes courage is saying, "Oh, I'm nervous, but I am here." For me, courage was using the very thing I was told to hide, my voice. And the E is embrace. Embrace means we stop waiting to become the perfect version of ourselves before we show up. We embrace the woman we are today, the one who is learning, who is healing, the one who still overthinks sometimes, the one who has lived enough life to know that reinvention is not always glamorous. Sometimes it is messy. Sometimes it is awkward. Sometimes it is uncomfortable. And sometimes you are building the plane while flying it. But embrace says, you know what? I am still worthy. I still have something to say. I can be unfinished and still be useful. I can be nervous and still be called. I can be awkward and still be powerful. That is what finding my voice has taught me. It has taught me that the goal is not to erase every painful thing that was ever said to us, because that would take decades and decades. The goal is to stop letting those words lead us. I'll say that again. The goal is to stop letting those words lead us. Because someone else's sentence is not your life's assignment. Someone else's opinion is not your calling. Someone else's inability to see your fullness does not mean you are incomplete. And sometimes that very place where you were shamed becomes the place where you are called to shine. I was told, do not open your mouth. Now I open my mouth for women who are afraid to use theirs. I open my mouth for the woman who thinks it is too late. I open my mouth for the woman who has spent years clapping for everyone else, but has forgotten that she still has something inside of her. I open my mouth for the woman in transition, the woman who says, I know there is more for me, but I don't know where to begin. And I tell her, begin with your voice. Not the perfect voice, not the polished voice, not the voice that has all the answers. Begin with the honest voice. The voice that says, this hurt me. The voice that says, I'm ready to stop hiding. I may be awkward, but I'm still showing up anyway. Your voice is your identity. Your voice is your courage. Your voice is your truth. Your voice is your lived experience. And your voice is your next step. And I believe there are people waiting on the other side of your courage. There are people who need the wisdom you gained through what you survived. There are people who need your story, not because it is perfect, but because it is real. And that is why I do what I do now. That is why I started the podcast. That is why I created the voice method. Because I know what it feels like to have shame try to silence you. But I also know what it feels like to speak anyway. And I want to leave you with this. Maybe someone told you not to open your mouth. Maybe life told you to stay quiet. Maybe fear told you it was safer to hide. Maybe shame convinced you that your voice did not matter. But today, I want you to hear something different. Open your mouth. Tell your story. Take up space. Use your voice. Not because it will always be easy, but because it is yours. And it was never meant to stay hidden. As we wrap up today's episode, I just want to say thank you for being here and listening. If this conversation resonated with you, please take a moment to like, follow, share, or leave a review on Spotify. It helps this message reach more women that may need it. If today stirred something in you and you have your own story of finding your voice, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a DM on Instagram at Lynne, Lynne, ST22, and say, I heard it on the podcast. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And remember, we are still finding our voice, one honest, brave step at a time. See you next time.